Wholeness and Balanced Vibration, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. It's another amazing time. I really wanted to get on this mic today to really share some powerful information that I feel is much needed right now, especially within the conscious community and the community abroad. You know, just not separating anything here and just looking at the entire picture. You know, I'm going to talk about, I'm kind of going to go back to square one a bit. The message these days is very advanced. It really has a lot to do with getting yourself together in the physical reality, because we've been talking for 6 years continuously about how to get yourself together on the spiritual level. And I feel like personally a lot of people are already on the spiritual side and they have some things that they need to clear up in the physical. So that's what I've been focused on. But it doesn't mean at all that there's not new people tapping into the message all the time, and many of those new people haven't actually been familiar with our previous work, so sometimes they're coming in based on what they are experiencing right now. And what that generally means is it means that they haven't heard any of the previous stuff, so they're just struggling with, hey, how do I handle myself spiritually? What's really going on? Can somebody tell me the truth about what's happening out here when it comes to entities and things that are vying for our energy, right? So I'm going to talk about a story that I've covered in different parts over the series of the work, but I'm just going to bring in a couple things so that you can kind of understand what's happening in the reality right now and how this is the fulfillment of a plan that has been taking place for thousands of years actually, but there's been new agendas or new people that are involved in that plan and also are looking to benefit from the plan themselves. And so they've incorporated new things into the reality that are messing with you, that are really, really disturbing your way of being and interfering with your personal frequency. So the first thing I want to say is no lives matter in this game. You know, there's this whole Black Lives Matter, and then there's White Lives Matter, and there's Blue Lives Matter. I'm sure there's Yellow Lives Matter, and I'm sure the entire rainbow matters. But the truth is that the game that's being played in the planetary system right now actually has us in a position of seeing that no lives truly matter to these people, meaning the people who are perpetrating this, the they in the thesis of the story, the protagonist. So, well, I guess that's the antagonist. The thing is that I really wanted to talk about first how the Nazis in World War II, they did not lose the war. So I'm just going to take it from the closest segment of events that we've had happen in our time to just give us an idea of what we're actually dealing with here. Because a lot of people they're dealing with their personal situation, but they're not looking at all that, you know, these people who have already collected the knowledge on every element that's inside of nature, inside of those plants that you're still yet to learn about, that have different types of equipment that can see into different spectrums. You know, there's the microscopes, but there's far infrared, there's gastric discharge or GDV devices, there's, you know, different kind of machines that can pick up different elements that are not even measurable, right, or in the parts per billion. So there's that still going on, right? So if we're in this reality right now and, you know, we're just trying to get ourselves together and figure out how we can stay stabilized, we're not in that arena necessarily that is bringing in all that information and even doing anything with that information. But I spent a lot of my time on the side of doing this kind of work and doing that kind of research, getting really into understanding, you know, what is the periodic table, what is science, what are chemical reactions, you know, what is the spectrum of light, et cetera. And in that process, what I've discovered is actually a lot of the metaphysical affirmations and a lot of the metaphysical principles and even the parables and scriptures, et cetera, are all really based on actions that you see take place in science and take place in chemistry, et cetera. So there's a huge connection there, but this connection we're not really abreast of because most of us don't go to those courses. We don't take those classes. Like if you want to be a master chemist at Merck or Pfizer, like how many years of school is that? And what kind of infrastructure environment do you need around you for you even to make that decision that that's what you want to do in life? So there's this separation then. There's a separation then of the people who have this high level of knowledge and then the people who are really tapped more into their emotional center and just have a very advanced emotional structure or a structure of feelings that pretty much control and guide whatever they do and whatever they're about. So the main thing, one of the things I want to talk about is about the creation of this false unity. So when I make the statement that, hey, the Nazis didn't lose the war, what I'm talking about is, see, what people do is they think, well, if one side really won, why would they have so many losses? Like, why would there be people that die? Like, Some people say, well, you know, if sometimes the gyms is what they call them these days, because some people get in trouble just for saying Jews. But if the gyms were also running a part of the banking system, et cetera, then why would there be a situation like the Holocaust if the people who did the Holocaust are the same people who actually own the banks? Why would they do that to their own people? And the reason is because no lives matter in this game that they're playing. Just like there's a lot of things happening in the African American or Black community with, you know, just the rap and, you know, the levels of negativity, the stripping of all of the knowledge, the reprogramming of all the knowledge, like what an all-seeing eye really is, what an eye of Horus really is, who was really on the pyramid walls, all this stuff just being used to, in fact, put melanin dominant people, African American people, in a worse position than they are. Same thing with Europeans, that the whole advent of the racial divide, which there's really not too many people living right now physically that were actually alive during the era of slavery. Those people are all now passing into something else. So all these new people, all these new Europeans who have developed a supremacist attitude, it's just because they've been programmed that way. And that is to their own detriment. But remember, the people who sent those programs out are European, are African American, are melanin dominant. It's going everywhere, right? It's everyone participating in being another person's stumbling block one way or another, whether they realize it or not. So we would have to look to the perpetrators then. And we would have to see that the process of what happened during the end of World War II was like this. The people who were winning decided that, hey, you know what? We never can really win right now, especially. And it's because we don't control the minds of the people that we've supposedly defeated by armaments and by weapons, et cetera. We don't really control their minds yet. And if anything, actually, they're more aware of who we are. We just finished bombing and destroying things. So if we just go in there and try to rule them, then it's going to be constant uprisings. There are going to be constant problems. And we're never going to reach the level of progression that we're looking for in a total immersion, total controlled society where we can basically get anyone to do whatever we want. So we need to launch another plan. Let's first fake that let's fake lose this war. And then let's go to another place that's already been set up and being set up. So it's all a play then. Let's get everyone let's get our scientists, let's get the next phase of this happening by going into this place called the United States and this place called the United Kingdom. Basically, these places with a false sense of unity. And the reason why there's a false sense of unity is because there's this whole idea, like many people go to the United States and they go from other countries that are already been war torn and bombed out. And even while they're there, they're like, man, if I could just get to the United States, because it seems like a promised land for them, right? But before that, most people were brought over to the United States based on slavery. And, you know, even the Chinese were brought over to work on the railroads. The Black people were brought over to pick the cotton. Many of the people from Poland just, you know, were falling out from already a bombed out country that actually got bombed out from the same perpetrators that was getting everyone to come back to the United States. But nobody sometimes is seeing this or watching this. So all this is actually taking place. And what's really going on is now you have these conflicted groups of people from these different races, cultures, and tribes all into this one place, and the propaganda is going across that, oh, we are all one and we are all together. We fight wars together. You know, we care about equality. We do all this stuff that we now have come to the full assessment and full agreement of that is not really the case. And that's why this whole Trump era and all this stuff that's happening now is rearing its ugly head, because we can't even go through a thread these days on really any video that challenges a person's opinion without seeing a racial comment about that person. So it's always been there then. There's never actually been any unity. What there's been is an idea of unity. And the interesting thing is when you study why would the idea of unity need to be there by these controllers, it's because, see, for a creative mind cannot think with feeling like that it's a slave and feeling like that it's being oppressed. It can only go to a certain level. It can only really do rudimentary skills. So what needs to happen is there needs to be this feeling that we're free and that everything is free and that this is the land of opportunity and that as long as you have your head on straight and you keep buckling into hard work and you work with good principles, then you can succeed too. You can become a part of this great vision and this great dream. Well, unfortunately, that's not true either. What we find is that the projects like CERN, the research that's gone on within the technological field that's built all the machines that are around us, the technical aspects of, and even the philosophies of some of our greatest thoughts and our greatest inventions have all been pulled from people who are not even benefiting off of that. In fact, a lot of them are living in some level of ridicule for what they created, especially if it was supposed to help others. But meanwhile, in the behind the scenes, there is a group or a phantom that is working on a massive plan that it needs you for a while to build these satellites, to build these rockets and these shuttles, and to put satellites in space and put cell phones in everyone's pocket and put computers in everyone's home, because it can't do that on its own. So it needs to use the citizens, if you may, of the structure in order to do that. So now we're at this point. And there's other things that we've missed because we don't study these sciences. We don't study frequency. We don't study art. We don't study colors. One of the things that we missed is that during the advent of the paranormal division in Nazi Germany, there was a high interest in not just paranormal activity, but metaphysical principles. And this is why you see Madame Blavatsky, Aleister Crowley, MacGregor Mathers, Jack Parsons, who's a JPL or Jet Propulsion's Laboratory. All these people are in the same nucleus, trafficking the same kind of knowledge that they're gleaning from ancient Indian or ancient Persian works, ancient cultures, from Kemet all the way into Samaria. So they're gleaming all this knowledge, and they're working with this agenda to gain control over everyone, to actually have total world rulership. Okay, so one of those aspects of total world rulerships in that technology is something that I call the dream machine. And what it is the simple knowledge that the frequency that most of your ideas broadcast down, and that most of your thoughts, which are invisible, go down, are actually in the different wavelengths that you cannot generally see with your physical eye, but you're perceptive of in some way or another. And these wavelengths I'm talking about is like gamma and infrared, right? And so these are out of your visual spectrum, like radio frequencies. Like when you play your radio, you don't see those waves going through the air, but they're there, right? So this automatically means just because you can't see it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Like there's this huge thing that, there's this huge denial when a person can't see something, so they can't venture out to realize that there's a lot of things that they can't see. So what happens is the creation of all this Wi-Fi and all these radio frequencies and all these broadcasting signals that broadcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, like the movie They Live. These frequencies that basically keep a person in anxiety, keep a person in fear, etc. Because even if you take a very high frequency that's still audible and you play it to a person, what you watch is all their muscles begin to tense up, because the body actually doesn't like those frequencies, no matter how high that frequency is. If it's not rhythmic and if it's not harmonic, if it's not an octave, the body has a reflection when it actually hears those things. And now what's happened is because we're not really paying attention to our body, we're no longer sensitive to what our body is telling us and saying to us. We don't even feel it anymore. It's like a person who goes on a fast for like 12 days and then after that tries to drink a soda and watches how their mouth just burns like they've just drunk some fire. And someone who's maybe been a vegetarian for 10 years and then goes takes a bite of meat and then catches a disease and starts, breaking all out in the face, etc. And it's just because once you stop doing something that is harmful for you, then your body starts to readjust. But if you start to do that all over again, then there's a reaction, right? There's a side effect. So what I'm saying is that the big game here is to get you to react. And the reason is because when you react, you send an emotional signature. So if you're upset, if you're angry, you immediately send out this emotional signature from your body. And just like we eat food, then the entities that are around, which Don Juan called flyers, they eat that. And if you think that that's just so far out, then why don't you start realizing for one moment that actually the entire reality that you're in, whether you want to see it or not, Alice, is predatory. Meaning that this eating all the time, hunting animals, just consuming other organisms, consuming energy, etc., just on a subconscious level creates what we call a predator. So we're not blaming anyone for this. We're just saying things as they really are, right? So in this predatory reality, what you find is you find that there's this need for everything to actually have energy. But the interesting thing is that when things need energy that are out of your visual spectrum, remember, things that are out of your visual spectrum, here's another misconception. A lot of people think that things that are out of their visual spectrum are only the things high on the visual spectrum. And that's not true. There are things very low on the visual spectrum, like that are lower wavelength that you can't see either. Okay, and this is why in the dark room meditation, you actually begin to see these subsonic or far infrared kind of entities moving around, because when you don't have light, your eye, or you don't have as much light as you have in the daytime or whatever, your eyes, for a long time, your eyes are forced to adjust, right? And they adjust more into those infrared frequencies, and then you can start seeing things that you couldn't see when the lights were on all the time, and then causing your consciousness to just only see what's in that particular spectrum. So the range of perceptions then, or the range of what's on that nanometer scale, are all energy that can be consumed. And many things that you can't see with your eye, that's the emissions that we give off, which you can't see, are food for them. It's important for you to understand this, because this becomes the culprit to why there is so much confusion amongst people, and why it seems like they're often urged to naturally go into conflict with others, even the ones that have been the most instrumental at assisting them to get to where they are now. So the thing is that it's first a realization that time is not linear. Like they keep saying it all the time to you. Time is not linear. It's not a straight line. It's more of like a circle. It's more like a wave. And the reason it's important for you to realize that is because that means that everything that ever was is right now and always will be. It's not that, hey, we're going to go into the future and then something new is going to come. No, everything is already here now. So this means we never really run out of oil. We never really die. Anything that has to do with something running out actually never really occurs. That's just all a product of linear thinking. So what this really starts to lead us into realizing is that since this framework repeats itself over and over and over again, that means that the beings that were here since the beginning, meaning since the first inception of time, that caused this whole idea of scarcity, which is time. The maximum form of scarcity is time, because you feel like you're running out of time. Even now, some people may have to go because they're running out of time. So what this is saying is that something started perpetuating this idea of time, and that something is actually still here, because since it's all a circle, it never leaves. There's nowhere to go. So when we come forward, we're going to talk about how to master time. We're going to get a little bit more deeper into what I'm explaining right now about frequencies and what's actually happening in our consciousness. And then what that's going to allow me to do is to explain something to you that is very simple, but very serious about what's happening to people around you that are not choosing to take responsibility for the energetic signatures that they're giving off. Wholeness. Okay, we're forward. So I'm gonna keep into this, and so the title I used was Dream Machine, the actual controlling the use of frequencies in order to control a person's consciousness. Radios, Wi-Fi's, all that data that's traveling down there, you are perceptive of that on some level. And the reason why, again, I use the term dream machine is because a lot of this milking and juicing of our consciousness and the light that we emit goes on actually while we're asleep. And contrary to what we believe, it's really more the new perpetrators who are also feeding off the energy, that are utilizing frequencies and utilizing radio waves and things to enlist that energy from us. Because the old group, the sorcerers that have always been here throughout time, are actually using systems more like the systems of worship. The old school, almighty and all powerful master from the greatest realm of existence, have humble, have pity on me, your humble slave that is less than an ant and less than a grain of sand in your presence. So that's the old schoolers, and they're still juicing the energy in their old juice mills, and they love that energy more than anything, which is basically full-on worship, right? But the new schoolers, right, it's totally different for them. They rather pursue technology as means to get the same level of energy and the same level of respect and energetic signatures that they get in the reality, right? So they utilize the technology to do that, and they have what I call the dream machine, which allows, it's basically a grid over the entire planet, and it allows them to tap in at times into your consciousness based on how susceptible you are to those frequencies. So some people have become very resilient against those frequencies as they move higher and higher into their own personal consciousness. In addition to that, many people have learned how to firewall themselves, which is what I call it, from those kind of frequencies and jam those frequencies so that way they're not affected by those frequencies as much. But it's a constant thing. As times evolve, technology evolves, it's a constant thing that you have to ask yourself, hey, am I agitated because I really have a problem? Or am I agitated because there's some frequencies of agitation that are out there that are being broadcasted that overall keep humanity in that gloom and in that transfer of energy with each other, especially through conflict. So moving on from here, what we realize is that a big thing, this is like a paramount thing that you come to realize, that total awareness is actually total fear. And I know some people are going to have struggle with that for a moment. And it's just because English uses all of the same terms to explain different modes of thought on purpose. So when I say awareness, some people think, oh, are you talking about consciousness? Because see, awareness and consciousness are similar to being the same word, right? What the awareness I'm talking about is how present are you in the situation that you're dealing with at that moment? At that moment, not overall, at that moment. This is acute awareness. So the reason why I say that fear is the ultimate version of, or fear is the ultimate aversion of awareness. And it's because, let's say, for instance, all of a sudden you start seeing this car careening towards you. At that point, how present you become in that moment is way more than you could ever accomplish with most of the things that you deal with in the reality right now. So this fear of whatever is going to take place within those moments brings you so present to yourself. You're right there in the body. Now, the interesting thing is that it's actually the same with many substances. Let's say, for instance, until you learn how to react and stop reacting, something like DMT, when you take that substance, because what's happening has never happened before and the things that you're seeing you've never saw before, there's this huge awareness that starts to become all pervading, like you basically are afraid. Oh my goodness, what's going to happen? Am I going to lose my mind? Something's going to come out of the reality? Is it going to eat me? So all these things start happening all at once. And this is bringing you into this acute awareness of where you're at that moment. And of course, in that acute awareness, you actually can't get out of the body. And this has become something to start to realize from your own experience. The more aware you are and pinged you are in a certain point, the more identified you are with who you are in this moment. And then what that means is that if for some reason you wanted to slip into another reality, you wouldn't be able to do it right then because you're too aware, right? And I'm not saying what's good and what's bad. I'm just telling you the states of our consciousness and the states of our being. And this brings me to the next point is that the two people that I've run into in this reality during my lifespan here that I knew could get out of the body and had been able to exhibit very strange things while I was around them, both said the same thing. The way that they were able to get into this other realm and to be able to go into these altered states is because they had a heightened level of relaxation. They knew how to relax and let go. So of course, if you're afraid of something, then the moment something bumps, the moment you see something that you feel like you're scared of or whatever, then of course that brings you more present, and then you can't get out of that scenario. You can't get out of that situation. So The next level of this then is to realize that ultimate relaxation, what that allows you to do is it allows you to pass through the membranes in the reality, right? So it's almost like you start leaving no signature because you're not responding. So the reality and what holds you into it starts to lose its connection to you. And then in that process, you can kind of slip right by the guards, as I say. Or what's really happening is that the reality is porous. It's like, from the size of nano or atomic molecules all the way up to fat particles, right? And when you start to leave less and less signature, you become smaller and smaller and smaller because you don't need any recognition. Right? So out in the reality, that's why I say ego is so dangerous, because the more and more recognition you need, the more attention that you need, the more you're willing to do. You're even willing to betray people that are around you and others that need your help. Right? So the thing is that the more that we get into one direction of our consciousness, it always equals the same thing, an extreme exhaustion of energy, versus one level is extreme conservation. So then you can see why the reality always wants to enlist an emotional reaction from you, because there's all these things around, whether they're inorganic or organic, vying for you to make an emotional expression so that it can get its food. So even further, if we want to keep going on with this, we realize that, again, the entire reality is predatory. Because if you notice how a bird is not going to sit there and wait to decide when you walk by, I wonder if it's a good human. Or another animal walks by, I wonder if it's a good animal. It immediately goes into the action of fear and then runs off and at least gets to a safe area before it looks back and sees, hey, what was that? Because 9 times out of 10, whatever is coming by for that little bird is probably going to either try to consume that bird or hurt that bird in some way or another. That's the bird's experience. So the same thing with many other organisms that are in this reality is that they're very aware of the predatory nature in this reality. So their first reaction is actually in the inclination of fear. And what I say is that all that does is it pushes the pendulum in a certain direction. And that direction is naturally decaying our consciousness. It's naturally decaying our body, naturally decaying who we are. So it's not just blaming the people around you that are actually engaged in that. It's realizing that you're actually in an entire reality that is designed that way. And then when you know that, then you can stop reacting to all the things, or start the process of not reacting to all the things that are happening around you constantly to get some of this energy. So remember, the beauty of human beings is that we're all carrying this energy. So when we're talking about the wavelengths, there's not really any variations outside of that. So what that means is that it's not that, oh, rich people give off a better energy or poor people give off a better energy. It doesn't matter your status in the reality to determine what quality of energy you're giving off. It only requires that you actually react. So this says a lot to people who may feel like that, hey, well, I don't know why I'm experiencing anything. Well, why wouldn't you be is the biggest question. So like, I don't know why I'm experiencing anything. Why would they want to have my energy? I'm not doing anything. Well, it's all the same energy. So it's important to realize that. So the next thing here is that when we have this energy scam going on then, and I'm going to explain to you the energy scam. So they tell you then that all is energy, right? That everything is energy. So why do we have a scarcity of energy then? Why, as oil is like something that we're using now, all the cars are running on oil, right? So why is there this scarcity created? And it's because, of course, we're using something that supposedly is running out, right? Okay, so anything in the reality is energy. So what we find is water is energy. Like they have, we're going to use it hydroelectricity. We're going to push this turbine. Yeah, but water by itself is an energy. Wind is an energy. So there's basically the entire reality is energy. But why do we have this scarcity of energy? Why don't we actually have free energy? And it's because it creates a reality where everyone feels like, oh, it's running out. There's a scarcity. I must betray the person next to me to make sure that I have enough, because at the end of the day, it's survival of the fittest, right? So this is that mentality of fear that's actually perpetuated by the energies used in this reality. So to me, all these energies are fake. This just the energy scam. We're not running out of energy. If we have 1 billion cars running on oil and those cars can't run on gas, there's a problem with the cars. There's not a problem with us being able to get energy. So we need to realize that this whole idea of scarcity actually also comes and is connected to energy, and energy is everywhere. Energy can even be harvested. They have this thing they call energy scavenging now. And this is because there's ions, positively and negatively charged ions, there's static electricity, and all this stuff running through the air right by us all the time. And at any moment, if we create certain things to pull in that energy, then that energy will just power whatever we're pulling it into. So they've been able to create clothes that while you walk, harvest the energy that charges your cell phone wirelessly. But of course, there's no implementation of that because there must be this scarcity. This must be the scarcity idea of energy in order to create fear. So according to Don Juan's works, once again, sorcerers since the beginning have been attempting to get people's energy by allowing them to pay attention or worship them in stages of things like football games, things like church worship services, these kind of things, because that's the energy that they feed on. They feed on high levels of emotional expression. So just recently we saw, I guess, the Atlanta Falcons and the New England Patriots, right? So we see an entire game of basically black versus white, Atlanta being very black and New England being very white. Perfect. They got the polarities going on. They even got Donald Trump endorsing New England. So then that puts everyone on the New England side is basically the white people. Okay, so that's how we're going to play the game. And then Atlanta, of course, Atlanta is the black Mecca, basically. So those are the black people. So then, okay, so look, black people winning, black people winning. Then for a quarter or overtime, oh, they lose. Or Democrats are winning, Democrats are winning. Oh, that's why they put Miley Cyrus there. She was the one trying to represent Hillary Clinton. And then all of a sudden, bam, they lose. And oh, they lose. And those energy signatures that are coming out from people during those processes is the energy that we're talking about, the energy that they're harvesting from you. So it's important to remember this. We're coming to a close here because the title of this video was Hollywood and Politics, Real Estate in Your Mind. So I had to say all of what I just said now for you to see this very clearly. So if you think about it, all races have activities, all right? So that's what I was saying. This is not a race game. You know, some people go out and they fly fish, you know, they camp. Other people, they go out and they study monuments. Some people get together with their family members. So there's all these activities that we generally participate in together. And it used to be in those activities that there was no computers present. There was no governments generally present. Sometimes there would be religious ideas present, which just shows you why religion is the old system. There'll be religious ideas present amongst the people and discussed amongst the people. But all this technology and all this stuff was kind of put to the back burner. You would have to go home to watch TV. But now what's happening is that what we find is a society where we're encouraged to tune in at every single moment to something that they can control and influence. So if you go to Facebook, it's the sidebar. Google, it's the sidebar. YouTube, it's the recommended videos. TV, it's whatever they want to syndicate. Netflix, it's whatever movie they've pushed in. So all of these avenues are basically channels for you to tap into them, right? But still, that was happening. You know, it happens, of course, more and more people watch TV, but still not as much as they want. They want almost like a 24/7, like the movie with the guy with the eyes open and they're programming the guy. They almost want a 24/7 of you watching them. Why? And it's because just like a computer sits there all day and waits to be programmed. So if they have something to tap into us at every single moment, then that means that we're on beckoning call for the next program. But the issue with this was, well, first, the system was that they needed to create something fake and they needed to create something real, right? And so the fakeness was Hollywood. And this is what you see, of course, in Hollywood all the time. There's all these fake programs and fake shows about different things that you're supposed to be able to accomplish or different things that happen that are all not really real, right? And then they created politics, because politics is supposedly the real thing. Like, that's what's happening. That's what's going to happen to you next based on these laws. And then they make it like, okay, well, but none of this is really being controlled by them. It's like, okay, it's the directors, it's the writers, it's all these other people, and it's, you know, the ones that you elect. But none of this is being controlled by the actual superstructure itself. But contrary to what most people believe, we find that actually all of it's orchestrated. Politics are orchestrated. Hollywood is orchestrated. So then what we see is that Aleister Crowley, and this is a person that everyone's pretty much familiar with at this point, actually was very instrumental in starting Hollywood. Okay, so you got to go look it up, and you'll find that actually the whole Damien, the whole Nightmare on Elm Street, and Freddy Krueger, and the dark side of this, and all those programs that went out to create the fear, to create the demons in people's minds, all that stuff was illustrated by the same society that was rolling out of the paranormal division from Nazi Germany. So they had that under control. So when you saw the advent of people like Ronald Reagan into the White House, Ronald Reagan was an actor before he became a president, for y'all youngsters that don't know that. But that whole advent of Ronald Reagan into the White House was the clear sign, like the movie Wag the Dog, check it out, that Hollywood is involved with the White House and one day wants to have a complete relationship. This is what they were saying in the past. They one day want to have a complete relationship with the White House to where actors become politicians. And that's why Leonardo DiCaprio and people like that are setting themselves up for their political career. Why? Because then what's supposed to be real and what's supposed to be fake starts to blur with the connection between Hollywood and the connection between politics. So then what you get now is, and this is bringing things to a conclusion of what's happening in the reality right now, we now have this advent of Donald Trump as a politician. But what do we really have? We really have a reality show that is so real for many people that they're forced to tune into this reality show every single day. And every single day there's something on that based on that reality show that's going on. And they keep it up. Oh, here's what's being done now. Here's what he did now. Here's what this country says. But what they're really doing is they're really finally completing their plan of getting people right in front of that programming device 24/7, whether it's their phones, whether it's the TV, or whether it's their computers, whatever. Okay? So now that that is complete, what we will have to do is look at what was the original plan when all of this started in this last 100, 200 years. And that original plan was to separate and cause confusion with people. And what's happening right now is people are not even realizing how they're being compromised. They just want to argue with the people closest to them. They want to argue with their family members. They want to argue with their teachers. They want to argue with anyone that is even close to them or in their proximity, right? So what this will ultimately create for that person is that person will either constantly get into conflicts in every single circle they get into, and they will find no rest for themselves, right? And so I want to pause for a moment just to let people see that what I'm witnessing right in the reality right now as a whole. See, I learned a long time ago that I needed to separate my being, my metaphysical consciousness, who I am supposed to be and who I am, from what is going on the roller coaster of reality every single day. And the reason is because I would never find wholeness. I would never find a space with no anxiety. I would never find a place that was calm. And it's just because that's not what's going on outside right now. People are confused. People are angry. People are upset. People are hurt. So when you go out into those frequencies, if you even carry an inkling, you're going to be exposed to that. So you need to figure out how not to become so exposed to that. So the main thing is, look, if you're going to help somebody, just do the work. Don't be concerned about getting something back from those people. Don't be concerned about what those people owe you. Okay? So in conclusion, I just wanted to say this to finalize things here, is to remember that all of this media and all this programming has something going on that you can't see. And what that something is that when you study, let's say, heat maps, like where a person's eye goes when they look at a screen, when you study frequencies, like what are the subsonic frequencies or frequencies that can't actually be heard by the ear but still affect the person? Like common devices are like, there's one that they put outside the malls in Europe to keep people from in a certain age range away from loitering in front of the mall, and you can't hear it. So this shows you right away that a person's consciousness and ideology can be changed and they don't even know it. They can just hit play on a video and never even know that the sounds are playing. And what I'm saying, what this is causing, because I'm watching everything, what this is causing is it's causing people who were really close together to all of a sudden separate from each other and to fight with each other. And Those who have been compromised and have started doing that are not really realizing that, look, man, one, or woman, that's not even you. Two, is it really that serious in the first place? Isn't there something so much more paramount to be paying attention to right now? Three, are these flyers, as they're called, feeding on you? And then four, that the total realization of all this can put you into a space to where you can find fulfillment. Meaning once you know all the stuff that I'm telling you right now and you accept that, hey, they're vying for my energy based on my emotions, and you choose to start dialing out of that whole thing and not reacting and build your energy, then when your energy is built to a certain level, then you will be able to enjoy the life of fulfillment and success that you're looking for. But as long as you have things around, it doesn't matter what it is, it'll come in so many different ways, that are personally pulling your energy down and making you feel negative, you have to think about what other people are feeling around you when they're having to absorb themselves into that negativity. So once again, watch yourself, see if you've been compromised or others around you, tighten up. You know, this is not the end of the world. There's no such thing. Get yourself together and start taking this serious, because quite frankly, no lives matter in this game. They're not playing with everyone. They have never been to a level to where they actually care. The only people that care are those around you that are giving you the wholesome advice, the admonition, so that you can correct yourself. Wholeness.